like you sat in a fucking lair or something there, mate. Nice and dark, nice and.
Let me get rid of this. Yeah, you know what? I spent not a lot of money, but a lot of time doing all the padding, all the soundproofing, and it actually does fuck all. So I might as well just got a better microphone at the time.
That's it, mate. Well, today, mate, I've been listening to some of the stuff that you do. I'm a avid gym goer myself, not as much as I'd like to be at the moment, struggling with me spine. But I know, we've got this gym bro science, haven't we? Everybody talks the talk when they're in the gym and talking about this, and everybody knows about that. And so I've got a couple of a good friend of mine. He's just won last year he won the Mr. Universe over 50s. Really good, knowledgeable guy. But I've been listening to you, mate, and you answer a lot of questions, very informative, very knowledgeable. And I've just a few things that I want your opinion on, mate, like steroid abuse in young lads is one that I'd like to speak about, and the negative effects of what it has on the younger generation. I see a lot of lads, 19, 20 years old, sat in gyms talking about taking Trembolone and things like this, and I just think you haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about. Another one is nutrition and diet. I've tried every single fucking diet under the sun, mate, and it's only since this year that I've really learned to understand my body and how my body works. Nobody else's, just mine. And get to know you. You know what you're about. You definitely know what you're talking about. So we'll start at the beginning, mate. You know where you're from. I've just figured out your name's Craig. I've known you. I've got you under as Apex in my phone. But we'll start where you're from. How you got? You're a bodybuilder. You're pro. You're pro bodybuilder.
No, far from it. Far from it. I'm amateur
Right.
bodybuilder, but avid bodybuilder.
Yeah, you look in fantastic shape anyway, mate. So I'll give you that.
Cheers, mate.
Um, but yeah, we'll start from the beginning, mate. Where you're from, hobbies, growing up, things like that, and just take me through your life, and then we'll get into things.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. First and
No
foremost,
problem.
it's first podcast I've been on. I've been running my own podcast for a full season, and it's always nice to be on the other
Oh,
end.
nice, nice.
Season 2 is coming, but I won't plug that on your podcast. So yeah, as I said, my name's Craig. A lot of people know me as Apex Fitness Coaching, but my name's Craig. Yeah, so I've been an online coach for 5 years full time now. I was a coach before that, but only part time. And one thing that most people don't really know is I was a paramedic for 13, 14 years prior to that. People that follow me on TikTok prior to that do, but I've tried to move away from that as I've pushed more emphasis into the business. So I was a paramedic for 13, 14 years, and I always wanted to improve people's health. We go into that healthcare profession to do that, and I became quite disillusioned with the job after a little bit. And as I got more into fitness, as I did my first bodybuilding prep still as a paramedic, I quickly realized that actually I can in my own way do more to help people and their health by being a coach. Because mainly, when you're a paramedic, you get into people whilst they've already got disease. They've got heart disease, they've got diabetes, they've had a stroke, and you're just mopping up the pieces. Yes, you're doing a lot of good work, but you're mopping up the pieces. You get into them almost when it's too late. Whereas as a coach, I can prevent obesity from happening. I can help people reverse their type 2 diabetes and prevent the risk of strokes and heart disease. And that made me really want to push the business. Amongst other things, obviously I've got a cap on how much I can earn and earn a living from the NHS, whereas as a business, the world's your oyster, isn't it? As long as you put the work in, you're going to make more money. So there's the financial side of it as well. So as I grew the business and Apex became my main livelihood, the competition side and the bodybuilding kind of comes part and parcel. And I wanted to be that person that was never genetically blessed, that could just make the most of what they've got with hard work and doing the right things. So I was the fat PT. I was the fat lad that could lift a decent amount of weight, but I'd never stuck to my nutrition. I was like you know, I did everything under the sun. I did keto, I did the supplements and this, and it wasn't until I actually said, look, I need to lead by example and I need to start doing the basics well and consistently. It wasn't until then I realized that I need to do this for the business and for myself. And that's where my passion for bodybuilding came in, because I realized that there's a lot of people like me out there that weren't the cover model, you know, all year round, that wanted to get amazing results but still have a great family life and have a balance, as it were. So, you know, I'm definitely not a pro bodybuilder. I call myself a lifestyle bodybuilder. So, you know, off season, I'm going to enjoy myself. But then when I need to dial it in, I dial it in, and then that's where we come today, really.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that. Like, you know, you've been on one side of the fence where you've seen a lot of people struggling with all sorts of physical illness, and then almost, you know, 180 that, and you thought before, you know, you're helping them now before they get to that point, I guess. And people don't realize the importance of, you know, people like you. And, you know, a lot of people have got this opinion on PTs that just because they look good, they show off and they this and that. And, you know, people don't understand the importance of nutrition. And I was one of them, mate. You know, I took steroids for years in my 20s, but I also took a lot of drugs and alcohol with it. That's what sort of this podcast was created around, was addiction. Um, and it was only about 3 years ago, mate, that I started doing blood tests on myself, and I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, this is, so I had, you'll know what it is. I had a TIA a couple of years ago, where I was just sat on my sofa. It's a good job. My girlfriend's a district nurse. So I was sat on my sofa and I just went completely numb. And I thought, fuck, what's going on? Couldn't move, couldn't speak. The only thing I could do was breathe and blink. That was it. And I thought, I'm dying here. And luckily enough, she did what she did. She got me to hospital. And then they started doing blood tests. And now I do them regularly just to check that, you know, I'm doing the right things. And my blood pressure at the time, I'm not going to say what the number was because I get it wrong every single time, but it was around about 210 over 160, my blood pressure.
Wow.
And yeah, the nurse said to me, how do you feel? And I said, I don't feel too bad. And they were like, you should technically be in, you know, some form of cardiac arrest here. And it took me back a lot, you know. I was really worried about it. Like I think I've said to you before, I'm 6'6". At my heaviest, I was 25.5 stone. But not muscular, just fat and depressed, drinking, taking drugs all the time, eating shit food. And then on the other side of that, I've been 17.5 stone, lean, eating well. So I know how to get there. I don't know how to sustain it properly. I think it's quite easy for somebody like myself who's got minimum knowledge to get there, but you know, it's people like you who keep you accountable and keep that sustainability is key, isn't it?
Yeah, and even I find it hard, you know, and I'll be the first one to say, look, I can have all these great photos when I'm on stage and you're shredded, and I try my best to do my due diligence and actually show the shit side of it, because it's not
Yeah,
easy, you know, for me especially, not especially, but you know, for me and others like me, I have to diet very hard. I have to give up everything, you know, the hour and a half of cardio a day, the 17,500 steps. It's not like you're just doing a little bit of cardio here and there to get shredded. So, you know, I have to put a lot of work in. And I know that that kind of physique isn't sustainable for me. You know, I am just predisposed to being a little bit softer. I like to have a little enjoyment. I don't want to put that level of work in to maintain it all year round. It's just too much. For me, it's about just trying to find that balance, allow myself to get a little bit softer, you know, enjoy my food a little bit, have that decompression time, and then switch it on when I need to switch it on. You know, when that prep starts, it's go time, and we're in the mindset to just fucking do the work.
Yeah. I think with me, I don't know, I get really, I've lifted weights my whole life, mate, but I'll get into the mindset of waking up at 6 in the morning, going and doing my cardio in the morning, getting the right nutrition in. And then I don't know whether I've got like some sort of attention disorder. I'm not saying I've got ADHD because I haven't, but I'll just sort of drift into all these different places, and that's what I'm working on this year. Really focusing on not procrastinating, making sure if I say I'm going to do something, I fucking do it. And this podcast is helping me, speaking to people like you, speaking to people who've been in addiction recovery services. I'm studying, I'm reading psychology books and neurolinguistics and all these things just to really ensure that I'm practicing what I'm preaching from now on, rather than just talking the talk and then doing absolutely fucking nothing about it. I want to start, this will probably piss you off a little bit. I want to start with sort of where I've been since Christmas. And I've asked you this question on your live to see what your response is. And I get the same response from all my mates who are, you know, into bodybuilding and stuff. I've been doing the carnivore diet since Christmas Day, right? It's definitely not sustainable. I'm feeling a lot of aches and pains in my bones and things like that because I think I haven't got the right nutrition. So I've come away from it now. I lost a lot of weight. I lost, I think, 20 kilo in up to now. I'm 126 kilo now, which is the lightest I've been in probably 18 months. But yeah, it's not sustainable. So I've introduced more fruit, more veg, more carbs. But the one thing it did give me was a good starting point to introduce good behaviors. Eating healthy food and not eating shit food. That was the only one thing that I'd say it gave me, was that building those positive habits of eating good food. And then I've introduced fruit, veg, and there's no shit food in me anymore. It's just all really healthy, good food. That's the only one positive I'd say that I took away from it. And then I'll let you slag it off now for the next 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, look, you've been on enough of my lives, you know, and I think it's nice to be on a podcast, and I love talking about this. I genuinely love talking about it. If I do a live on TikTok, it's almost like a snapshot. You know, you're seeing all these questions. You've got time to give a snapshot, and I want to get to the pertinent points. So if you don't mind indulging me, I'd love to just like go into a little bit more context. You know, so I will absolutely go in hard on some of these fad diets, but in essence, if we take it back and we start looking at essentially what makes a diet work for somebody, and that's the key thing we need to understand is it adherent? So is it something that you can stick to for a period of time? Well, you stuck to it for X amount of time, so it worked for you. And the second thing is, does it help you create a calorie deficit? So no matter what the diet is, it can be Atkins, keto, intermittent fasting. It can be the soup and shake diet, all this bollocks that's going around. If it helps you create a calorie deficit, it is a diet that's going to help you lose weight, lose body fat, and then in turn become generally healthier if we're judging health off those metrics. So whenever I slag off these fad diets, which they're not balanced, they're not sustainable long term, they're fads. It's because people tend to do them off the promise that they are magical. The only way you can lose fat is this. You know, this is the only way. This is magical. And they very rarely, you know, if you see somebody that's talking about the carnivore, keto, or anything like that, they very rarely talk about the one thing that makes it work, and that's the calorie deficit. They will always focus on, with carnivore specifically, the focus on it improves your autoimmune. It reverses your autoimmune diseases. It gives you more energy. It does this, it does that. They never talk about a calorie deficit, which ironically is the only thing that makes it help you lose weight. And then they emphasize that because it makes it sound different. it makes it sound snazzy, and it makes that person that's speaking about it sound like the authority. I've got to listen to that person, like Carnivore MD or all the other bollocks that's out there.
Yeah.
They've all got
Sean Baker
carnivore.
and people like that.
Yeah, exactly. We can all list off. I can't because I've got a shit memory, but yeah, we can all list off people that have got these in the names and they're making money off it. But you look at them, Carnivore MD, it's like, oh, wow, okay, I need to listen to this guy. He's the only person that knows what the score is. It sounds snazzy, it sounds amazing, it's something different. Whereas then you look at someone like myself or most other people that have been in the industry for the longest, and we're talking about balance, we're talking about eating fruits and veggies, we're talking about calorie counting. It doesn't sound very interesting. So why would I buy into that? Because it's boring.
Yeah.
Whereas it's the thing that's been around forever. It's always been a calorie deficit. It's just now and again there's new ways of creating that deficit. So whilst I do slag them off, if it works for you long term, brilliant, fantastic. But speaking about carnivore specifically, I know very few people that don't like carbs. Who doesn't like pasta, pizza, potatoes, chips, bread,
Yeah.
alcohol? There's very few people out there that want to completely remove those foods. If you don't like carbs or you can't eat carbs because you've got like intolerance and stuff, then it could be fucking phenomenal. But for most people, and we see it in the literature, that people stick to these things for maybe 6 months and then they have to go off plan because it's just not hitting their needs. I go in harder on carnivore and keto because we do know that actually can long-term have a health detriment. So when we look at the foods that carnivore and keto are promoting, the higher fat foods, whilst fats are essential for hormonal health, fat-soluble vitamins and minerals, because they're pushing saturated fat to such a high level, people generally get unhealthy long-term. They become pre-diabetic, they get skewed lipid levels, and then that gives them that increased risk of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, stroke, hypertension, type 2 diabetes. And we can see that because the people that make millions off it, Carnivore MD, are now not carnivore advocates because they do their blood work after a year, 2 years, and they're pretty much fucked. And they think, shit, I'm going to die young. So I'm going to have to start putting in vegetables and a little bit of carbohydrates now.
I think you're talking the carnivore MD. I think his name's Paul Saladini or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one.
And I watched him, mate. So him and Sean Baker were the reason because I just wanted to lose weight essentially, and like I completely agree with what you just said. It sounded cool. Oh, we'll go back to the ancestral way of eating, just meat and fish and eggs. And I thought, oh, this sounds really easy. I love all those foods. And then I seen a podcast with him on about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think it was the Patrick Bet David podcast, and he was on there, and he was saying, "I don't do carnivore no more. I've looked at my blood levels, and pretty much everything's fucked, like you've just said." And he's introduced a lot more fruit because I think originally people had this worry about sugar in the carnivore diet. We can't have sugar in our bodies. The last thing that I'm going to be worrying about is sugar, mate. The stuff that I've put in my body over the years. And he actually came out and said on the podcast, he said it's so fructose and things like that in fruit. Our bodies can accept that no problem. It's actual, this sugar that you can buy from supermarkets and things like that he was talking about in the end. But as far as sugar goes that are in carbohydrates and fruit and things like that, or glycogen, he actually came out and agreed, look, they're good for me, they work. And I was sat there thinking, you motherfucker, you've just told, I've just come on this carnivore diet thinking that it's all singing, all dancing. I'm going to drop loads of weight. I'm going to have high energy. And then he's saying this. So essentially now what I've done is I've added fruit and veggies into me diet. Not a massive amount of carbs because I've got Don't know if you can see it. I've got a big turkey neck. And I've noticed when I start eating carbs, I collect quite a lot of water, probably because I'm lazy and I don't do enough cardio. So what I've tended to start doing is just putting in the carbohydrates in and around gym sessions. You might say that's wrong, but I want your um, perception on that. Is that any good?
Well, I mean, look, carbohydrates, I think it's similar, because that interlinks with a lot of the kind of fad diets, keto. You can't have any carbs. You have any carbs, you're not going to be in ketosis. You're not going to be in fat burning mode. I mean, whatever the fuck that means. And if you have any carbs, you're going to gain fat. And a lot of it comes down to the carb insulin cycle model. People think that if you consume carbohydrates, your insulin is chronically spiked. And when insulin spikes, you can't burn fat, which is just a fallacy. It's just something that someone's made up from mechanistic data, which just doesn't translate into humans at all. You've heard me use this analogy a lot. The reason why we know from the science that that's not true, but also just from a practical point of view, you look at the people that are the leanest individuals on the planet, the athletes, the ones that are jacked, the ones that are shredded, they're the ones that eat a hell of a lot of carbohydrates. Even bodybuilders, when they're 3 weeks out from show, most of them are eating quite a lot of carbs. So how are they so shredded if they're eating carbohydrates, spiking their insulin and stopping fat from being utilized as fuel? Well, it's because it's not about carbohydrates and insulin. It's about your energy balance. These individuals have got such a high energy expenditure that it offsets the carbohydrates that you're using. Now, that being said, you consume too much, it'll put you into a surplus. That surplus is then what gets stored as body fat. So if your body needs, argument's sake, arbitrary numbers of 2,000 calories based on your activity level to maintain its weight, and you eat 2,500 and you've increased it with carbohydrates, yeah, those carbs are going to make you store fat. But guess what else causes you to store fat? If you overconsume by protein, you will store body fat. If you overconsume by fat, you store body fat, but to varying degrees. So am I saying that if you consume 500 calories of fat over versus 500 calories of protein over, you're going to store the same amount of fat? No. You're going to store far less body fat if you overconsume by protein, just because the thermic effect of food, which is the energy your body needs to use to actually digest it, is far greater for protein. Then you look at carbohydrates. Let me break that down, because I try and get ahead of myself. So, right, you need 2,000 calories to maintain your weight. This person over here is actually eating 2,500 calories. So they're 500 calories over what they need. So whatever happens, they're gonna gain body fat. All right. If they overconsume by protein, they might gain a little bit of fat. If they overconsume by carbohydrates, they might gain a little bit more. If they overconsume by fat, pretty much everything is going to be stored as fat, because fat is almost the same as body fat. So it's very easy to store. So ironically, people that promote carnivore and keto, if you go into a surplus because you're eating loads of fatty foods, all of that is going to be stored as body fat.
Yeah, I understand.
Whereas if somebody that's eating a balanced diet of protein, carbs, fats are in the same surplus, they're going to gain far less body fat because they've got all those different macronutrients in there. So carbs, not the enemy. Carbs are not something to be scared of as long as you're controlling your energy balance. For somebody like yourself that's using carbohydrates as a fuel source for a workout, I think that's almost like the holy grail, to be honest, because what's the things that we need to do in order to grow, maintain, preserve as much muscle tissue as possible? And that's eat enough protein, but almost just as importantly, maybe even more, is we need to be lifting heavy in the gym.
Yeah.
If you're not lifting heavy in the gym, you're just not going to be, and that's relative to the person and their goals, you're just not going to grow muscle tissue effectively. What do we need to lift heavy in the gym? That's energy. And the best energy source for that is carbohydrates. The reason why we don't see keto, carnivore bodybuilders, or we don't see many of them, is because they tend not to be the biggest individuals because they don't eat carbs. So I think what you're doing is great because you're going to maximize carbohydrates for your workout, but you're probably not going to be using that many that it's going to push you into a calorie surplus as long as everything else is in check. And then that just brings me back to the keto and the carnivore. Why are they successful in the short term for reducing body weight? That's because they get rid of a whole macronutrient group. It's very easy to reduce your calories if you say you can't eat all these hundreds of foods out there. You can still be in a surplus, but it's much harder because you're thinking about eating less constantly. So I bet when you first did carnivore, you actually lost a shit ton of weight in the early, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
So for the first 2 weeks, I lost about 11 and a half kilo. 2.5 weeks, I've lost 11 and a half kilo. Honestly, it was like, wow, what's going on here? But now it's just sort of leveled out. I'm not really losing a massive amount of weight at the moment.
And in those first 3 weeks, how did that initial massive weight loss make you feel about the diet you was doing?
Like it was working.
Yeah. It made you buy into the process. It made you indoctrinated. It made you believe that this actually, fuck me, they're right. They're fucking right. Yeah. So now we've got to say, okay, why? Why did you lose so much weight on carnivore? Well, yeah, you probably reduce your calories initially, but because you're washing out carbohydrates, you're going to be utilizing all of those glycogen stores in your muscles. We know that as you lose glycogen or use glycogen from the muscle, you don't only lose weight from that glycogen deposit, but for every gram of glycogen you lose, you're probably losing 3 to 5 grams, depending, of water. So you lose glycogen from the muscle. That glycogen will take with it water. So of that 11 kilos that you lost, some of it's going to be body fat, but a lot of it is going to be glycogen and water, which is why now you're slowing down, because now it's all about the calorie deficit, not just dumping loads of water from the muscle belly. But you're already indoctrinated, and you're kind of lucky that you're kind of figuring out that actually there's probably a bit more to it than that. But there is a lot of people, and you would have seen them on my lives, that are like, no, the only way, because I lost this in the first 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean?
I think one of my biggest things with it, mate, was I've never been lean, shall we say. I've always been your typical juice head look, big, quite swollen. Never been able to see me abs since I was about 22. But they're coming back now. But I guess the one thing I'm trying to get to is when I was lifting weights in the gym on just purely carnivore, a lot of people, you hear about like lifting weights fasted and things like that, which I've never really been into because for me, pretty similar to yourself, I've always liked to lift heavy weights. So for that, I needed energy. What I found was on the carnivore was that, so let's take a leg press, for instance. Last year, I was comfortably leg pressing 600 kilos for 8 or 9 reps, comfortably. This year, about 2 weeks ago, I put 300 kilo on there, put 350 kilo, struggling like fuck. And I know my weight's dropped, but such a massive difference just from, a nutritional change. It was like all my strength has pretty much gone into the bin at this moment in time because I'm not feeding myself the right nutrients to, use my strength properly, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, nutrition is, I'm sure we'll get onto anabolics later on, but nutrition is the most anabolic thing you have at your disposal. We talk about, abs are built in the kitchen and the physique's built in the kitchen. I mean, I like to split it down. You know, fat loss is probably 80% nutrition, because you ain't losing body fat unless your nutrition's in check. You can't out-train a shit diet. Fact. When it comes to muscle development, I'd probably switch it and say 80% is the gym work, but you're going to find somewhere in the middle that you got to fuel your body. You know, you go to extremes like what you're finding now, and it's going to have a fucking impact. You know, you're not going to. Are we all right swearing on here, by the way? Are you going to get demonetized or anything?
No, fucking hell, no.
Good. So yeah, you get to that point where nutrition fuels the workout. The muscle builds the workouts build the muscle, and it's just this like continuous cycle. And it's not until people see the difference when they go to extremes. And if you're just pottering around in the middle, like doing a bit of this, doing but you'll probably just potter around in the middle and not see a big difference. But I've definitely seen it. You know, you go to the extremes of a prep, bulking and cutting, and you see what nutrition can do, even on and sleep and this and that, you know, on what it can do to a workout. Dropping, you know, 8-9 reps over the course of, you know, 3 sets can just be down to having 100 less carb in your diet.
Wow. I didn't realize it could be that sort of that level of severity. That's huge. That just purely from 100 grams.
Easy. I mean, you think 100 grams, that's 400 calories. You know, say if you've been on the lash like the night before, most of your calories are coming from booze, you've not slept, you know, your diet is maybe a takeaway and you've had more fat rather than carbs. You know, I know you obviously that's an extreme example, but you know, if you have poor nutrition, you're gonna have a shit session. There's no two ways about it. Especially if it's something that your body's not used to. You know, your body loves homeostasis. You go a month of repetitive nutrition where you've been eating 400 grams of carbohydrates consistently, your body expects that level of nutrition and fuel. If all of a sudden you drop down to 200 grams of carbs, it's like, well, what the fuck are you doing? I don't know what to do now. Like, you want me to now work on less fuel, and I can't really remember how to tap into these other fuel sources because I've been reliant on this for so long. Like, yeah, you're not going to work as hard. There's other variables to it as well, but yeah, it plays a part.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And I mean, I've been where you said there about, you know, you'll find a certain point, you'll just potter around and you won't really notice any change. I think that's where I've been for a long, long time. I've always lifted heavy weights, always had a basic knowledge of what, you know, macronutrients are and things like that, but never really given it enough thought or enough work. And I've always just pottered around in the middle where I'll lose a little bit of weight, put a little bit of size on, lose a tiny bit of weight, put a bit, and I've done that for years and years. And it's only this year, mate, when I'm really looking at myself and going, right, I'm 38 this year. You know, I'm struggling with back pains. I've got leg injuries from the football that I played for years and years. It's time to really start looking after my body and understand what I'm putting into my body needs to be a necessity for me to function correctly. And that I've not done that. You know, I abused my body for, I'm going to say 20 years with drugs and alcohol, mate. Touch wood, I'm sober and, you know, doing some really good things. And it's all about, you know, speaking to people like you, people who are informative, and I've got fucking common sense, you know. I guess my next question, mate, creatine, the importance of creatine and what your take is on it.
It's the mecca, the holy grail. It's the natty steroid. It's honestly, I can't. If someone said to me, "What's one of the most underrated things in the fitness industry?" It's going to be creatine monohydrate, and it's scary to think that because so much information is out there about it. You know, I will guarantee I do a TikTok live, and there'll be over 1,000 people come in during that live, and I'll probably get 20 people ask me about creatine, and I love repeating myself. You know, I will repeat myself time and time again because it is that important that people understand that anything you can take, like when we look at supplementation as a topic in general, there is you could probably list off 20 things that you've taken that are pushed onto you by supplement companies or in pre-workouts. This is going to help with your performance. I guarantee none of them do fuck all that is worth your money, your time, or you're just not going to see anything noticeable by taking it. Whereas you take creatine, this is one of the only supplements that is actually going to do something tangible. It is going to actually increase your performance. It is very cost effective. And I think that's why supplement companies don't push it as much, because it's fucking cheap. And it has a lot of efficacy to it. You know, it's researched. That research has then been replicated. It's been seen in human randomized control trials time and time again. And I think what is really exciting now is we're now exploring the possibilities of it. Not me, I'm not exploring it, but I'm now reading about the possibilities of it being used for medical treatment. You know, there is a lot of cognitive benefits for it. Yeah, they're using it or hoping to use it for the prevention of Alzheimer's, dementia. There is cognitive benefits for improving your, just productivity, memory, in some cases sleep. And one of the main things for that is it is essentially a fuel source. So creatine is a fuel source for the body that we just don't get enough of from our diet. And that's the main reason why it's great for performance and the actual muscle building, because it helps you train harder. Like I say, we're now getting into the realms where we know there is many more benefits to it. So as you can probably tell, I'm a bit of a geek for it, and I think everyone should be using creatine. My kids take creatine. If I wake up in the morning, I get my shaker out, I put my creatine, I put my hydration stuff in, and they come straight up to me with their shakes. And bear in mind, they're 1 and 3, so they're there with the little bottles, and they go, "Shaky, daddy." I was like, "Yeah, of course you can." And I'll put a little bit in, nothing crazy, and they have creatine with me in the morning.
No way. I'm going to start doing it. My son, he's nearly 17. He goes to the gym anyway. My daughter's 13. She does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I might start giving it to her, see what she thinks of it.
Well, I don't think there's no downsides to it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose your hair. You don't need to cycle on and off it. You can just take creatine every day of your life for the rest of your life.
I listen to you'll probably listen to the similar people that I do. Andrew Huberman, Dr. Huberman. Yep. So I listened to his podcast while I was falling asleep a couple of weeks ago. I didn't grasp it all. That's why I'm speaking to you. But he was talking about creatine and how important it is for to function well. And there's a lot of lads, you hear them. Again, creatine's been around since I was 16, 17. We were taking it then. I didn't know what it was, but we were just taking it. But like you've just said there, slowly but surely, people are starting to ask questions about creatine. And I think, and I agree with what you said there about all the proteins and all the other shit that they sell. Most of it's made in the same place and just put in a different tub with a different label on it. I mean, a lot of it is made in similar places. But would you say there's any way to measure the amount? So the creatine sort of method that I've always been told is 20 grams for your first couple of weeks each day. Don't know whether that's true or not. And then 5 grams a day after it, just to sort of, keep it in moderation, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's been a standard approach. I think as of perhaps like 10 years ago, there was 2 approaches. So the first one was creatine loading, get it all in the system, and then just keep it topped up. And then the other train of thought was, well, actually, it doesn't take that long or that much to get your muscle belly saturated with creatine. So why spend more money? Why put more in when actually after a week, in the grand scheme of things, you're going to take it for the rest of your life. So what's an extra week or 2? you know. And I think that was mainly put in by the supplement companies, so you actually use more creatine in the early stages. So yeah, you can load if you want. There can come a risk that if you don't drink enough, you can get some stomach cramps, because creatine actually draws water into the muscle belly. Not anything that you can see, you know. So it's not like sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't want to retain water." Well, yeah, you fucking do, motherfucker. Like, you do want to retain water, just in the muscle, not in like your visceral fat. You know, you don't want to look watery, but you won't on creatine. So I always just tell people, just take your normal creatine dose every day. You will get saturated within a couple of weeks, but you're going to get the benefits of it straight away regardless, because you're already having more than what you would have done without it. And when it comes to dosaging, I think 5 grams a day is, again, the standard, and I see nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And to keep it simple and to keep costs down, I think 5 grams a day is perfectly fine. If you wanted to be a little bit more effective with it, especially as either a bodybuilder or a bigger dude like yourself with more muscle tissue than the average person, you can work to 1 gram of creatine per 10 kilos of lean mass. So if you're 100 kilos and relatively lean, you might need up to 10 grams. You know, so we're not talking about hundreds of grams or big disparities. We're just talking, if you are a big dude, big bodybuilder, rugby player, whatever, you just might need a little bit more to be 100% effective. But 5 grams a day is absolutely fine.
I'll go with that. I'll take your advice on that, and I'll let you know. Right. So my biggest question and the biggest piece of information that I'd like from you is the dangers behind steroids, side effects, addiction, negatives, and you can end with the positives. You know, I'm just a normal lad. I'm not a bodybuilder. I like going to the gym. I know what the positives are, or did know what the positives were. Now I see a lot of them positives as a negative, especially with the ego. My ego went through the fucking roof when I was taking steroids. I thought I was the bee's knees and acted like an absolute arsehole for a long time. So that might be, just me personally. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start with your perception on, what steroids is doing with the young generation, as it's always done, really. It affected my generation as well. So yeah.
I mean, well, let's just preface it. I take anabolics. I've been using anabolics for 2 years now, and I've always, even before I used anabolics, I followed more people that were talking openly about it. And I think especially over the since YouTube's been the biggest social media platform, you've got TikTok, you got Instagram, and influencers in the bodybuilding world. I think it's just a massive positive overall that there's more and more people talking about it. There's far less of these fake natties, out there. More people are talking openly about it, because I think most people are not thick as fuck. If you look like a duck, if you talk like a duck, you're probably on fucking gear. So yeah, I followed those people, like TM Cycles, Josh Bridgman, Mike Israetel, Physique Collective, of which my coach is one of the founders, Matt Strong. And I followed a lot of those people who were talking about anabolics openly, presenting the positives, but also talking about the negatives. And more importantly, the people I followed are those that were talking about how to do it in the safest way possible. The coin has been, it's been coined the term safe for use, because it's never safe. You're always going to have a detriment to your health, but we can do things in the safest way. You relate it to alcohol. You can have a glass of wine a day, you can have a bottle of wine a day. What's going to give the biggest negative impact to your health? It's going to be the person that abuses the shit out of it, right? The person that goes to the doctors and have their liver checked regularly, they're being more diligent than the person that just sits at home hoping that nothing's happening. And they were the people I followed, and that's why when I decided that I was going to take anabolics, I was going to be following that method and doing things in the most responsible way, the safest way, and just make sure that, you know, if anything did happen, I had enough knowledge and support to make changes so I could stop it from getting any worse. And when we talk about kids in the industry, that's where I really try and emphasize my efforts. Really, it's more about telling people what not to do, because you've been in my lives and I'm sure you've heard conversations with kids in the gym who are perhaps 18. Their older brother or a guy in the gym who's jacked has said, mate, if you want to get big, you take 500 milligrams of testosterone, take tren, do this, do that. You're young, don't worry about it. You're just going to swell up in 16 weeks. You can come off, and then nothing's going to be wrong.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's just a load of fucking bollocks. You know, the younger you start, the more detriment it's going to be. The more gear you take, the more detriment it's going to be. And the more dickheads you listen to in the gym that haven't got a clue, the worse it's going to be. And we just see, I see it definitely time and time again. So, like, yes, younger people are taking anabolics more. Twofold. I think one, they're just so easy to get now. You know, you go online, you can buy pretty much whatever the fuck you want. You know, it's not, yes, it's illegal to sell them, but you can own anabolic steroids. They're a Class C drug, and as long as you're not selling them on, it's legal for you to use. Just broke the fucking stand. So, you know, it's easy for people to get hold of them. You're not having to find someone, you're not having to talk to the big scary guy in the gym anymore to get your gear, you know, which removes the barrier. But also, there is a lot of information out there, you know, forums, people talking about it openly. You can find drug protocols, and you can pretty much find any information you want. So it's that, okay, now we can get as much drugs as we want, and we got a little bit of information, and a little bit of information can be dangerous. So we just see more people taking them now. The detriment to that is, whilst there is people doing it in a safer way, they're just still not safe, you know. So you might get a kid that's doing this and that because their mate was on a forum and they saw that, but they're not investing the money in their health. So out of 10 kids that are 18, well, let me take you back. When you was 18 and you were doing whatever you were doing, did you for a second worry about your health at the age of 18? Or was you Billy Big Bollocks, I'm 18, nothing can touch me?
Yeah, I mean, I only had this conversation a couple of months ago with a friend of mine. So my friend, he was huge, mate. Like when we were 18, he was fucking huge. His arms were unbelievable. And he'd take gear for, all we'd get told is take this for 16 weeks and you'll be fucking massive. That's all we ever heard. You'd take it for 16 weeks, you'd come off, you wouldn't do no PCT, you wouldn't do anything. You'd carry on drinking, honestly. And you'd be there with a skinhead, massive arms, and you'd think, well, this is it, this is how I'm supposed to look. And we'd do that for most of our early 20s, come off, no PCT, start whenever you feel like it. You'd have 2 weeks off and you'd think, that's enough, now I can go back on for another 16 to 20 weeks. We didn't care. And it was only, like I said to you before, mate, it was only when I'd done a blood test a couple of years ago and I was like, oh shit, we need to get some, I need to be doing my due diligence here and looking after myself, because I'll be dead before I reach 50 otherwise.
Yeah. And a lot of times I have a regular conversation, and it could be with some random person that say, yeah, but I've got no side effects. I'll tell them, mate, if you carry on smashing this gear, you are going to die young. Right. And they say, yeah, but I've got no side effects. I'm good as gold. You don't know. You don't know, because a lot of the things that are going to fuck up in your blood work, you will not have symptoms until your liver stops working, until your cholesterol is fucked and you die of a heart attack. And it happens all the time. You know, even your blood thickens up. You know, people think, oh yeah, my cholesterol's fine. Yeah, but what about how thick your blood is? That's going to cause you to have a heart attack as well. So there is a lot of kids out there that think they're indestructible, and I've put the fear of God into kids, and they've gone away, done their blood work, it's come back, and it's fucked. And the first thing I say is, go to your GP, because you are fucked. And it's scary. So yeah, my views on kids, and I call them kids because if you're going to act like a kid, you've got to be described as a kid. Then if they're not doing things in the safest way, they think they're indestructible, and I just want to get that message across to kids. That being said, I think we're all realists, right? You know, how old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
So my son's 17 and my daughter's 13.
Okay, so your 17-year-old kid, you know, you can be the best role model, you can give him the best advice in the world, but if he wants to do something, do you think you're going to be able to stop him from doing it?
No.
And it's even worse, I imagine. I mean, mine are 3 and 1, so I've got that all to fucking come, mate. So, you know, hats off to you for getting to 17 without killing them. But when they leave home, they've got even more freedom. When they get their own job, they've got even more freedom because they don't have to come and get money off you. So I'm a realist. I know kids are going to do things, whatever we say. All we can do is give them as much information as possible so they can hopefully make a better decision. And I had a very similar conversation with my coach on my podcast. And I said, you know, what's better? You know, giving no information and hopefully they just don't do it in the first place, or giving more information, knowing that more people might do it, but they might do it in a safer way. And I think the general consensus is give the right information. Don't give all the information, but give the right information on how to do things in the safest way possible. And I will always be very consistent in my lives when people are asking me questions is I'm not going to talk about dosages because I don't want you to copy what I'm doing. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I will tell you what not to do. I'll tell you how to do it in the safest way possible. Bear in mind, I'm not going to tell you what to do. And I'll point you in the direction of where reputable information is. And hopefully that then starts the ball rolling for them to start thinking, well, actually, I'm just going to take a step back. Yeah, I was going to jump on a massive cycle next week. I'm just going to take a couple more weeks to just see what this guy's talking about and do a bit more investigation.
And I'm glad that you mentioned how old my kids are, because that is pure. I think that's one of the subconsciously one of the reasons why I'm trying to do these things with people like yourself, trying to get this information out there. And because I can turn around to him and say, "Don't take gear," but like you just said, then he's just going to go, "Yeah, sound dad, whatever," and then he's going to fuck off down the gym, and he can buy gear from any gym around here, anywhere he wants. I've had him in the gym lifting weights since he was 13, with the guy I mentioned before, the guy who won the Mr. Universe, Daz Cooper. So he's taught him the correct sort of methodologies and mindsets, if you like, to lift weights. But the one thing he doesn't know anything about is steroid abuse. And we had a conversation about a year ago, me and my son. He found out the life that I've lived, thought it was cool, and he sat down with me dad and he said, "Have you heard of this guy, the Liver King, Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Oh, he's just been caught taking steroids." And then we had a conversation on drugs and steroids for the next hour on how it's not cool, and if you allow it to, it'll fucking ruin your life. More so with recreational drugs and things like that. But again, the topic of steroids was in there, and these are important things that these kids need to learn because, okay, he's 17 nearly, but in 3 years' time, he's a fully grown man living his own life, doing what he wants to do. And it's important that this information's out there for, like you said, to allow them to make the correct decisions with what they're doing.
Yeah, and I'm glad to say that there is a lot of reputable places out there. So if I could, if anyone wanted to get safer information, good quality forums like the Physique Collective. I've got no affiliation to them. Yes, my coach is a co-founder, but I don't get any kickbacks. It's just a place where there is well-educated people giving very safe advice. There is in a forum that's
I'll write that down.
monitored, it's solicited, and it's just a great starting point just to listen to like-minded individuals who openly take steroids. And yes, they push the boundaries of steroids use because there's a lot of competitors in there, and there's always a spectrum, right? If you have big goals of like competing at a high level, you're going to have a higher tolerance for risk in relation to steroids. So my tolerance to steroids is going to be slightly higher than somebody that just wants to look good for a holiday, albeit I don't think that's a great excuse for steroids.
No.
But my tolerance is much lower than an IFBB pro that's taking grams and grams of gear. And so there's always going to be that spectrum of what do you want to push it to. I think the key thing with that is be knowing. Know what you're letting yourself in for, and then it's an informed decision as to whether you do it or not. Now, I relate it back to my paramedic days, and as long as people know all the information, so they know that what they're going to do could say that I go to a patient, or I used to go to a patient. I don't work in the ambulance service anymore. What is this? Did you just say that? Oh, I think Siri just like popped up on my phone. Sorry about that. I'm professional. So you go to a patient, you think they need to go to hospital because they could be having a heart attack. They say no. Okay, well, are you going to drag them out of the house? No. They've got the right to say no. They've got the right to informed consent. As long as they know that by not going to hospital, they may die of a heart attack, as long as they're able to retain that information and use that information, they can do whatever the fuck they want. They can choose to not have that investigated and stay at home. It's the same with anabolic use. As long as you understand the pros, the cons, the risks, there's not a lot we can fucking do to stop people. All you can do is provide them with the information to stay as safe as possible. Let's Johnny's, all right? 14-year-old kid who is they've just hit puberty, they are raging. You can give them a pack of Johnnies. You can say, don't leave it in. You can say, put a fucking Johnny on, but
it won't.
Ultimately, it's up to them to put it on and pull out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't take that advice, kids.
Very good.
The pull-out method does not work all the time.
Yeah, fucking hell. Two people that I listen to a lot, you'll probably know him, is that More Plates, More Dates, the American guy. I listen to him, he talks about gear, and that Vigorous Steve, I think his name is.
Yep.
Vigorous Steve is very too scientific for me, mate. He talks about stuff and I listen and I think, I haven't got a fucking clue what he's talking about. But, it's interesting because he talks about protocols and things like that. So I've been listening to quite a lot of that purely because he's just walked past me son now. Purely because I know in a few years, as we all do, the question will come up. He'll have a bottle in his hand and he will try it. I know he will. So as long as I'm giving him the right information to make his own decision, and he is a good kid as well. He's not the way I grew up. So what does the next 12 months hold for you, mate?
Next 12 months? Well, I last competed in September. That was my last show. And the goal, I always try and take a step forward, and do it in a realistic way. So my first ever shows was just to get on stage and get there. Then it was to get on stage and get a place in and get to finals, which I did. So I completed that.
Nice.
And now I want to win a show, and I want to, I want to place in the finals. So that's kind of where my escalation goes. And so for the next 12 months, I need to put on size. So I'll be growing. I'll be hopefully not having any meltdowns along the way. So I'll be able to document everything on TikTok, Instagram, hopefully get some vlogs out there, and just I want to try and show people that, you know, as a busy dad, as a professional trying to run a business, you can still achieve great things. Am I going to be an IFBB pro? Probably fucking not. That's not the goal. No, I'm 38. I'm not genetically blessed. So I just want to show people that you can get amazing results doing it in the safest way possible, without fucking yourself up along the way. So yeah, 12 months prep next year, and then we'll see what we see. But it's going to be a big year in terms of bodybuilding. And then in terms of the business, I mean, it's already turned into, as social media grows, as you know, business grows, you start incorporating like virtual assistants and business mentors, and this, you know, it just allows you to push the business in so many other ways. So I've got my academy that's just launched, which is cool, which is like a low ticket offer for people that just can't afford full online coaching. So that
Oh,
started
wow.
this year.
Okay, that's cool. That's a really good idea. I've never heard of that before in, you know, British online. I've never heard of that. What a fucking brilliant idea that is.
Well, I mean, look, they're out there for sure. You know, there's I don't mind plugging other businesses. So there's like one, Team RH. You know, that's quite an established low ticket app, and it's just about. I'm just trying to get my own personality into it. So instead
Yeah,
of it
yeah,
being, you know, like all the facts and figures, I'm trying to dumb things down. Not that people need it dumbing down, but
yeah,
you know, my rule is if I can't explain something in a sentence and make it so that everybody can understand it,
yeah,
then I might as well not talk about it. You know, like when I give the example of why insulin doesn't cause fat gain, let's talk about just a visual example of athletes that have a load of carbs. You know, you don't need to know the biological pathways of it. You just need to know that, look, this
yeah.
works, this happens. So yeah, the academy is almost like a, a inexpensive way of getting workouts, nutrition advice, a bit of education, and also you get contact with me through like the forum. So going to be pushing that this year. Got a lot of clients that are competing as well, which is cool. So you're going to be a lot of time and effort put into them.
Mm.
But it's just going to be more of the same, mate. Just try and help as many people as possible, especially like on the lives. You know, stay consistent with that, and just, you know, make
Mm.
sure that the business keeps on growing as it is, which is
Mm.
I feel really lucky and privileged that the business is where it is now. But there's always more to go, right?
100%. I think for me, mate, obviously I've started this podcast. I'm 27 episodes deep now, I think. But I've got an idea. I've got a goal of where I want it to be in a couple of years. I want it to be, don't like saying recovery group. I want it to be somewhere where there's growth, whatever your growth needs to be. So, you know, everybody's different. Um, we've all got our own beliefs, our own goals, our own educational system that we learn and the different ways we learn. And there's nothing like that in North Wales where I live. And I want it to be a business where it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you are, what you're struggling with, we can provide some form of, I don't want to say solution, but where we can provide a possibility or just even that spark, you know. A lot of people haven't even got a spark in their life and they're down and depressed and addicted to drugs and alcohol and they feel as though, you know, life's worthless. And if I can help people, just give them that little spark to do something, um, I'll die a happy old man. That's where I don't know what that looks like at the moment, um, but I'm working on it. Me and 5 or 6 others are brainstorming at the moment to see what we can do, how we can do it, and where we can do it.
What was your
Um,
spot?
that I nearly died, um, and then I tried to. I don't know if I can say the word because we're live on TikTok as well. Tried to unalive myself a couple of years ago, and when I woke up, I thought something's got to change, and I joined like a small men's group, only a small group of men, 11 or 12 people as a last resort. I thought I need to do something here. I need to do something where I'm going to change because I will honestly, I was, I was knocking on hell's door, not heaven's door. I was knocking on hell's door at one point, and I met my girlfriend, and just really dug down into the depths of who I am and why I am the way I am. And it was by doing all this sort of mindfulness work, and really truly understanding why I hate myself and why I wanted to do these things and why I was such a negative piece of shit for a long, long time. And I described myself that way, I described myself as that person. When I'd look in the mirror, I'd see a demon. I'd see the devil. I actually did a DMT trip a couple of years ago, and as soon as I shut my eyes, it was like there was a devil in the reflection. Like as soon as I closed my eyes, the devil was nose to nose with me, and I seen it as my reflection. And I'm not saying I was a seriously sadistic person, because I wasn't. That's just the way I perceived myself. But my spark was, you're gonna die, so we need to get you out of this, because you're gonna end up dead in the next 2 or 3 years otherwise. And that was enough for me. Again, I don't like using the word rock bottom, because everybody's rock bottom's different, and some people hit rock bottom and kill themselves. So I don't like using the word rock bottom. But that was my kick in the backside to say, look, let's get yourself out of here. And by doing so and having conversation with other people, I feel powerful now. I feel as though I'm educating myself daily with all that. I said it yesterday, but there's a fucking psychology book at the side of my bed, mate. 2 years ago, if somebody would have said you're studying psychology, I'd have laughed. I'd have laughed at them and said, but I am, and I absolutely love how I'm able to have conversation with people who I would never have met, like yourself, and be informative and educational and provide a service to somebody. Because for a long time, I lived a hedonistic lifestyle, money, drugs, thinking you're cool. And that's not the lifestyle that I want. This being in service to somebody is probably the most powerful thing you can give back, right?
Yeah, and I love that, mate. I work with a lot of men. I mean, look, in every aspect of my life, as a paramedic, you deal with mental health, more men than women. We know that statistically. And then
Yeah,
when I've become a coach, it's it's scary in a way on how much male mental health is there. But I think it's also a great thing that over the last 5 years, I've seen more and more men, especially men
yeah,
that have got kids, especially men
yeah,
that have been through shit. They do reach out for help more, whatever that
yeah.
help
I
might
agree.
be, whether it's like your podcasts, whether it's talking services, or whether it's just going to a coach and saying, I want to better myself in some way. And
Yeah,
I love how, a lot of people don't like the term male masculinity, but I think it's a thing. I think men are wired to need certain things. We need to have a purpose. We need to be wanted. We need to be, we men tend to be people that want to look after other people and be that kind of,
agreed.
that patriarch, at the top of the family. Um, but we also need to be strong. We need to be physically fit, and we need to at least have not. We don't need to all be bodybuilders, but we all need to have the
Yeah.
capability of thinking, yeah, I can challenge myself and lift that weight. It gives you that.
Hmm.
It sounds so.
It gives you drive and purpose and clarity on what you need in life. Like
Yeah.
because again, these things people say masculinity is poison or toxic. Toxic masculinity is a social construct, I believe, that was created to suit a narrative of conversation that gives a generalized concept to every man. And that's not the case. I mean, somebody wants to describe the way I used to act as toxic. That's fine. It is, but I'm not now. That, we give such definition to these words that we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
And everything you've just said there, we need to be strong. We need to protect our family. Well, there's fucking nothing wrong with that. And yet, you look on social media, for instance, you would be demonized for allowing yourself to have such an outlook. When, I mean, what is wrong with wanting to be fit, wanting to be strong, wanting to be educated, wanting to protect the people that you love in your life? What is wrong with having that outlook? It's really worrying me at the moment. I listen to a lot of lives, mate. I don't really do many, um, but I sit and listen, and I think, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's a scary, scary place at the moment, social media,
Mm.
and it's very worrying for your children's generation when they're growing up. Where will social media be then?
Yeah.
Where will we be? It's a very, very worrying question that sits in the back of my mind every day.
And don't you think? I mean, I know. Like, let's take it to an extreme. Okay, who at the minute is probably one of the most in terms of how they act, in terms of their actions, in terms of how they speak? Who is the most masculine man on TV at the minute?
You're probably looking at, for me personally, I don't watch him, but they'd probably say Andrew Tate.
For Andrew Tate, so who's probably small fry. I'm looking at Donald Trump.
All
Right.
right, okay, yeah,
I'm going to go
yeah.
to like the top honcho. Who's, in my opinion, I'm not saying he's the best. I'm not saying he's great. I'm just
I'd
saying
agree with that. I'd agree with that.
at the minute he is the most masculine person on the planet right now because he's literally throwing his weight around. He is
Yeah.
bullying people. He's taking it to extremes and he's using that male masculinity to. And Arla, this is real awkward, but isn't it? So I'm just on my
Hello.
podcast. Can you shut the door for a second and I'll come out? Okay. I'll come. I know. Well done. Gardening's amazing,
It'll
and
be,
this is
it'll
where
be done in 5 minutes.
I'll be done in 5 minutes. So that's real life. That's the real behind the
Yeah, I
scenes
love it.
of.
I love it, mate.
So yeah, I think no, Donald Trump, the ultimate male like figure at the minute. And again, I'm not saying it's right, but he is that. I'm throwing my weight around. I'm going to make things happen. He's taking action, rightly or wrongly, and shit's changing.
Yeah.
We could all agree that for right or wrong. And I think
Yeah.
obviously there is going to be a scope of where we need to be for balance. He is right up there. He is off the reservation and he's off the Richter scale. And then we go right down to
Yeah.
the other end of males that just are not able to complete the simplest of tasks and they will just sit there. And they're the ones that need bringing up and need the help and support to be healthy,
Agreed.
productive individuals, I think.
And because I was one of them people, mate, I was one of them people at the opposite end of the scale for a long, long time where I just couldn't function. For the Jordan Peterson says we could sit at the end of our bed and we could list 10 things that we know that are wrong with us. We know that they're wrong for our lives, but we do them anyway. A lot of the time, the biggest question that you have when you're depressed or in addiction is, why me? What's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? Why do I feel this way? Well, if that was me now and I was sat next to myself a couple of years ago in a bed, I'd say, well, for one, mate, you don't sleep at all. You take narcotics, you drink all day, you don't eat, and when you do eat, it's shit food. You're not training. You don't very rarely go outside in the sun, if we ever get any. You lock yourself away. You don't speak to anybody, and you see yourself as an extremely bad human being. There's 9 things that I've listed off that I would associate with me 3 years ago. That is a million miles away from the person that I am now. But you go through them one by one and cross them off. Right, I eat a lot better. I'm sleeping very well. I'm no longer in addiction. I don't drink. My nutrition's really good. I speak really well about myself. I'm reading books. I'm back in the gym. I'm spending quality time with my family. There's 9 positive things that them alone, without even treating the concept of whatever your mental health issue is, will massively change your life. Massively, massively change your life.
Totally agree, mate. And the best compliment I've ever had, and I still to this day, I tear up about it. I had a guy come to me. And I didn't know this at the time, but when he signed up, he was in the lowest place he had ever been. He was about to lose his family. He was depressed. Hid it very well. And I think sometimes, well, a lot of times they're the scariest and they're the people that are the most vulnerable because they hide it
Yeah.
and no one knows to reach out.
Yeah.
He signed up to a photo shoot challenge, and 6 months, got into the best shape of his life. He did a photo shoot, got the amazing memories, and we all went out for a social after. I left, and he caught up with me, and he pulled me back, and he said, "I just want to let you know, and I didn't tell you this at all during, but you've saved my marriage." I was like, "What the fuck do you mean?"
Unbelievable.
Like,
Unbelievable.
what the fuck do you mean? Like, I've saved your marriage. Like, me and the wife, we were due to, divorce. We was due to do this, blah, blah, blah. And just because I feel better about myself, because I've got in better shape, I'm sorting out my nutrition, blah, 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 it's turned it around. And I didn't know what to say, but I knew it made me feel good.
Unbelievable. And there's nothing more powerful than that, right? Like I said to you before, you could be on your deathbed, and even if it's that one person, which I'm pretty sure it's not, but even that one person there, knowing that you have benefited that person's life, is so much more powerful than the thought of, which is again, the nice is buying a nice car or a nice holiday. So much more powerful, and it's real happiness and real joy, and they're the things that I'm going to really focus on this year, mate. I've got one more question that I ask everybody at the end of them. If you could sit round a dinner table with four people from history, they can be family, friends, alive, not alive, whatever you want. It could be anyone, any four people you want. Who would they be?
Wow. So I would sit at the table from history. I'd love to sit with Genghis Khan
Oh
because
yes, now we're talking.
I mean, Jesus, that guy, he either knew something really special or he was just batshit crazy. And I think he's probably a bit of both.
Both,
But I mean,
both, yeah.
like 20% of the Earth's population? He just decimated and slaughtered. I'm sure I've just made that number up, but it was a lot of
Well, so
people.
there was him and Alexander the Great conquered almost half the earth, almost. So I think it was around 40%. One of my favorite quotes, I've got the quote upstairs, was, "I am the punishment of God. If you would not have committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you," by Genghis Khan. Love that quote.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus. I would love to have Neil Armstrong because I want to know if
Oh
he
wow.
stepped on that fucking moon or not.
Did he fuck?
Did he fuck? Yeah. So I'd love to have, and just like a real, historical figure, the first
Yeah.
guy, you know, just to get his perspective on how it was to go into a place where you didn't really expect to come back. Really, you go
Mm,
into space
mm.
and land on the moon, and so yeah, I'd love that. I would love to sit down with Jordan Peterson. I think he's
Love him. Love him.
yeah. I think he would be um, one of the most interesting people to ask questions, and you're perhaps not going to be able to understand half of what he's fucking talking about, because I can remember I
Yeah.
can remember watching the first podcast with Joe Rogan, and I didn't have a fucking clue what he was talking about. But I think when you
Yeah.
start to learn how he speaks and how he formulates a constructive argument and discussion, I think you do pick it. It's a bit like his own language, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the last one, I don't know why I'm about to say. I do know why I'm about to say this, but I would. This is a bit of fucking a soft one, but I'd have my nan who passed
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Only because one of my biggest regrets in life, and I'm all for not. This is one of the reasons why I do what I do and why I take action in leaving the NHS and doing this. Is my biggest regret is I didn't go and see my nan when I had the opportunity to see her in the hospital before she passed away. I was a young kid. I was scared, if anything. But to this day, it's my biggest regret. And I always said from that point, I would never regret anything, and I'd just do it. So I'd have her at the table to say sorry. That'd be about it, really.
Love that, mate. Love that. That's it, mate. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to come and speak to me, and I appreciate all the information that you've given me. And it's job done.
Mate, nice. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's mate, it's been shit up.
Yeah, enjoyed it, mate. Really have.
Well, mate, have a good day, and the podcast is gonna go crazy, I'm sure.
Hope so, mate. I hope so. Like I say, it's something that I'd love to do full time in the end, but I know, Chris Williamson, he's got millions of followers now on YouTube, and I think he said the first X amount of episodes was extremely difficult, and we had to fight hard for people to watch them. So that's what I'm doing. And we'll with the help from the people that I speak to, to help build my channel. Hopefully, one day I'll be doing it full time, mate. But yeah,
Well, I'll leave you
the-
with this, mate. I think you are already in the top 0.5% of all podcasts by just having more than 10 episodes. So you're already in the top 0.5% of all podcasts ever created.
That'll do. Hey, I'll take that one. I'll take that one. Right, mate,
Fantastic.
have a nice day, and go and spend some time with your kids, mate. Thank you very much. Cheers,
Cheers,
pal.
buddy. Bye now.
Ta-ra, mate.